Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorey, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. I am chatting with Lindsay Dickerhoof today. She is a hairstylist, makeup artist, Mary Kay consultant, and owner of the Airstream, which touts 2 mobile wedding salons. She is also a mom to 2 beautiful babies, Clover and Grant. So Lindsay, welcome. Thank you for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And we are definitely in that time of the year and in life when our babies are sick. So I know you have your sweet baby boy on your lap. So we welcome him here today too. And we are excited that we can still continue to do this. And I love that you're willing to show up like this and kind of show the realities of prioritizing ourselves and putting ourselves first in our businesses and still being able to be there as a mom to our kids, especially when they're sick and they're not feeling so good. So I appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to do this anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about it this morning, I was like, should I cancel? But from what your mission is and everything, I'm like, no, this is exactly like what it is. Like, this is the trenches of business and motherhood. And it could not have been to be honest, a more intentional timing. So
yeah, absolutely. Right. The universe is putting these obstacles in our path at just the right time. So Let's share them. Let's showcase them. So perhaps let's start with that then. I'd love if you could just share with us a little bit about the evolution of your business, the Airstreams, and kind of where motherhood came into play for that. You know, was motherhood first and then your business came, or did the business come first and you had to adapt it and include motherhood into that progression? So walk us through what that looks like a little bit.
Oh man. So I was a hairstylist, makeup artist for weddings and just in the salon in general. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to create a business that, to be honest, I didn't have kids yet. I wasn't in a relationship, but I've always felt this inner calling to create a legacy for whatever next generation. Yeah, I was just praying about it. And God put on my heart that I was going to start a mobile wedding business in an Airstream. And I know that sounds incredibly specific, but it truly could not have happened without it being so clear and specific. And so with me saying that, it was probably about a 2 to 3 year process of actually it coming to fruition. And I still had not had kids. I was not married, nothing. But in that process, I had left a commission salon to start my own business so that I could create the revenue to afford to pay for this. Because what ended up happening is I couldn't get approved for loans because I was a single woman business owner. And the concept was so out of the box that they had no idea how to get me a loan. And so through that process, I really had to rely on God and just hope to create that revenue of, okay, how am I going to do this? And so it just happened step by step. I had people in my life who just were so incredibly gracious to give me the advice I needed. And I found an Airstream in Oregon. And so it took a year to build. And so through that time, I paid it in all cash, which was such a blessing because now I don't have any debt in my business, which has been a huge blessing, which I'll get to. But through the process of me building it, I met my husband now about 2 weeks before I got this trailer, and he was from Ohio. And he grew up on a farm, and so he knew how to pull trailers, and I did not. So
amazing.
It was such a God thing. It's wild to truly see the whole picture. But so he helped me learn how to pull it. He helped me with weddings. He helped me get the business off the ground. And it was really hard. It was a really hard business to get off the ground because the concept was so new. Nobody knew what it was. They didn't understand. It was an experience. Yes, it was a service, but it was also an experience. And so it really took a lot of marketing and really explaining and, entertaining that concept. And then COVID hit. And well, okay, then we got engaged. And so then I was going to have a wedding and then COVID hit. And it really shifted my business to the point to where we built another trailer so that I could work in the salon full time out of this Airstream. So we had two now at this point. And my husband built the second. And in the midst of COVID, we were able to still get married. We created the second Airstream. And then I would say about year 3, weddings were finally taken off. Again, it was like, yay, the public opened. And
Yep.
then I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, I've always wanted to have kids. I've always dreamed of having children. So it was unexpected. We had a honeymoon baby. And in that moment, it was like, okay, I'm going to still operate. I'm going to get a nanny. I'll be fine. I'm going to do my thing. I created this plan in my head of what I was going to do. And we were still booking weddings. And I'm like, yeah, after I have her, I'll be good. And so anyways, I had no clue.
It hits you hard.
It's true, but you want to be optimistic,
Yep.
right? And so through that process, I had needed someone to take over my clientele and to also help me with weddings for when I was gone. And so I hired my first employee, and she was great. She was fresh out of school. She was willing and eager to learn. She was willing to kind of get her hands dirty, and she helped me a lot, helped me a ton. And when I had my daughter, Clover, life changed. I mean, as we know it, right? It's like, yeah, nope. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to do anything. I just want to take care of this little baby, this gift. And my life completely went 180. So flipped upside down, whatever, for all the good ways though, right? It's like, I mean, I want to say that in good faith because yeah, we can have a plan, but God's plan is so much greater. And when He places these things in our life, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so now, evolution, so I have my daughter, and I felt God put on my heart that we were supposed to move back to Ohio. I was in Washington at this point, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what we were going to do. It was just kind of like my husband got this job offer. We felt the need to do it. And so we just stepped in faith. And through that, I was leaving behind these businesses. And there was a huge leap of faith. Like, okay, I'm going to leave these in other people's hands. I went from a trading time for money to being a actual employer or someone who people had to come to for, whatever. And that was a huge shift in business. But, all by God's grace, we did not have any debt with these trailers. So I could leave them and not feel this forced push to create revenue where it wasn't needed. I could kind of flow in this in between. And then at that time too, I felt this need to start a Mary Kay business. And so because I just knew that they would go hand in hand and it would create another stream of revenue for me. So all these things happen. We're still, running the trailers from Ohio. I go back in the summer times since my family's all still there, and I'll work a few weddings, but most of my weddings are ran by other people. And all in the midst, I'm building my Mary Kay business, which has been it's a new concept for me because it's a different business structure. It's direct sales. And then I got pregnant again and had my son. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. I don't know if I answered. I felt like I was very long-winded, but
I loved that. I think you really encompassed a lot of the different stages that us as women go through in motherhood, but also when we're having this desire to create something else for ourselves. So I really do appreciate the kind of transparency in all of that, because it is all encompassing, right? There's a level of trust that needs to be had and navigating what gets put in our way that your story and this evolution is such a beautiful example of, because I think there's a lot of fear that comes up around not knowing the runway or not being able to see what the timeline's going to look like or how long it's going to take us or what the end result, right? We can have all of these goals and visions in our minds, but things will get tossed in our paths and we have to navigate them. So I love how much your story really encompassed that. So I want to dive into a couple of things that you mentioned there. And I think we'll just kind of plug away at them over the next like 30 minutes or so. Perhaps let's start at the beginning. I feel like I have so many questions for you, and I feel like my listeners are going to be like, I hope she gets to this. So hopefully we can answer a lot of the questions of our listeners as well. You had mentioned just the challenges of being a single woman, wanting to start a business, an unproven concept, and having to kind of navigate a married man's world, in terms of like struggling to kind of get somebody to take this leap and this chance on you with a loan. So perhaps walk us through a little bit like how you navigated that piece. I know you had mentioned, right, finding the right community and going back to work to build some income so that you can buy these trailers debt free. Like walk us through that point of building this business. Like what was coming to mind for you and how did you just continue to move forward in all of that adversity?
I mean, I would say that it was my first big, like, okay, mental shift. It was a mind shift that I had to take on. And that took a lot of trust. It took a lot of trust in God. It took a lot of trust in the people that I not worked for, but my clients. And it just took a lot of faith in me. But I think before me trying to convince all these people, I had just left a business where I was the employee for 7 years. And so it took me little steps to get to this point. So when I started, it's like the vision was what I had to hold on to. The vision was I had this literal physical Airstream in my mind. How was I going to get there? And it's so funny now that I'm in direct sales because I think God is so intentional. But hearing a no is not the end of the world. And yes, I agree. Like working in a man's world and like having this, I could have taken on that of like, I'm a single woman. I mean, there were days where I'm like, this sucks. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, this really sucks. Like, if I was married or if I had a husband who knows? I could have thrown out this entire victim mindset. But really, at the end of the day, like, I had everything within me to make this happen. I just had to trust God, and He plugged into me what I needed to happen. And I think through the no's, it just created the shift mindset. Okay, where do I need to shift then? If they're telling me no, okay, it's not going to be this like classic get a loan, go get, classes from whoever, like all this stuff that I was hearing from all these other people. Like I was hearing from other women. And this is the thing too, is like we are in such an age of women getting small business loans from different, in Spokane, they have a ton of programs. And I just had to take on that. Okay, it's just going to be different. And there's going to be people that are going to come across the same thing that I can help through in the future. That it's not like no is not the end of the world. So,
Yeah. I love that too, because there's a level of clarity you get also, right? Like as you get more no's, it really refines and clarifies the path for you next, right? What the next step could be or what the other options are. So I do also think there's a lot of blessings in the no's as well that we don't quite have gratitude for until we get past them. And that's okay, right? We can look back and have some gratitude for the journey that we go on. And it can be really hard in the moment, but knowing, right, and trusting that we will find the path. And I always say too, like, inactivity is probably your worst enemy, right? It's like, I would rather be getting no's. And it is a mind shift, right? To be able to accept that as something working for us, right? When you're in the moment, you're like, oh my gosh, why is it another no? Or what do I do now? But really, ultimately, it gives us more information as to where we then need to go next. And getting that activity moving gets us further along in this goal. So I really love that you highlight that and have that trust and gratitude looking back on it now. So when you think about that, starting this process, you have this like very specific vision in mind, and you are then buying this Airstream and you have been able to kind of get from point A to this point B. What is that in terms of timing? It was a couple of years at this point.
So it took me about from the start of the vision to the actual buying of the Airstream, I would say it was probably, I want to say around no, it was like 2 years. And then the finishing of it was a year to build
Okay.
the Airstream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important. And I want to highlight that because there is a level of like instant gratification, right? We get these ideas. And I mean, I am absolutely guilty of this. Like I journal every day and am thinking about all these. When I get really grounded in journaling sessions, I get all of these really great ideas on what I want to do with this podcast and, this project and all of that. And eventually I have to like reel myself back in because I'm like, okay, like these are all great ideas. It's going to take some time. So I think highlighting the timeline on that, it's not always you get an idea and it's super easy and that's how you know it's the right one, right? It's like there's a process that goes along into it, and just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong either.
Oh my gosh, no. And I wish I could, I think right now that if I could highlight what you just said, just because it's hard does not mean it's not meant to be. It's not going to happen. Holy cow. Like, I feel like right now, like you said, in this instant gratification, this microwave world, I've been hearing this a lot lately. It's delayed gratification. Can you be willing to be in delayed gratification in anything? Because then you can be in business.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think sometimes it's like we see on Instagram, we see on just, it's so easy just to flip through whatever and be like, oh my gosh, they have it so easy. They, got it going in a year. They did this and this and this. And it's like, well, who knows what happened before that? So yeah, I've really been like, that's been my mindset lately. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I always like to highlight that because I think, right, there's like this misconception of how quickly something like this should happen. And I think a part of being able to navigate through that too is, you had mentioned it, is this community that you're able to go to for advice and calling in. I mean, you quite perfectly called in your husband at the time, right? Without even really knowing it, right? It was like trusting that the transitions and the support is going to show up for you in the moments that you need it. So, can you share with us a little bit about what your community looks like at the beginning stages of this? Like, who did you surround yourself with to, kind of help you navigate this, and how has that evolved as your needs changed?
So it's funny you say that. So I have a really big family. I have three sisters, a brother, and then there's me. And then my mom and I are super close. My parents and I are super close. My parents did not agree with what I was doing, but that's besides the point. I would say it was my clientele. My clientele was a huge belief in me. I had some friends, but I'm going to be really honest, Emily. I didn't have this big group of people that was, I mean, people were like, heck yeah, do you, like, if that's what, whatever. But there was not a ton of people I could go to where it was like sounding boards. Does that make sense? Like, it was like, oh, that's an interesting concept, but do you? It was never like and so not until I got the trailer, it was mostly my relationship with God. And that's really how I feel like leadership is. You have to lead yourself, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Once I started doing it, I would say then I gained community. So I would say halfway through the process, that's when I found Karina Tripon. She was a business coach. And I think I was like her first client, I'm going to be really honest. But
I
she
love
was
it.
like the total hype girl. So
Yes,
I
she
think
still
that's all I
is. She's
needed.
amazing. Hmm.
100%. So then she was the one who set me up with my husband because
Oh,
she knew him. She knew I needed someone. So she did that. And then through that, I also gained some friendships and people who encouraged me. But I would say, sounding board wise, towards the end, it was a lot of relationships with my sisters, Karina. Honestly, my husband was huge leading on from that. And then Karina started Ginger Root Society. So then through the process of actually doing the business, that's when I had that community.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it really is remarkable too when you open the door to allowing and kind of calling in that support, how miraculously it does show up. And Karina, we did do an episode with her. She was the third episode that we released on this podcast. So for anyone listening who's interested in more about her, we do have an episode with her. And she is definitely a major hype girl. She brings so much energy and trust and intention to the table that it's such a great episode. So I do recommend anybody who hasn't listened to hers, do check her out. And I love that you highlighted that too, right? Because you built a community for yourself that you wanted for the long run. And it is about bringing people into your lives, taking on that power for yourself, leading yourself, getting yourself, the answers that you need, and then bringing on that team. And you also did that right with the business when you made this move back to Ohio. So let's just jump there. What did that look like for you in terms of trust, of kind of handing that back to somebody else to execute, and you were just kind of monitoring and doing what a CEO does, right, without being the boots on the ground anymore? Like, what did
right.
that transition look like for you?
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. I mean, we've gone through so much with it, to be honest. It was a lot of trial and error. There were definitely moments where I didn't feel like I was equipped for that. I still feel like I'm learning how to lead others and like learning how to be that person, because I think at first, it's like, of course you want everybody to treat your business exactly how you would, but they're not going to. They don't have that investment. And so you really have to have grace. You have to have grace, and you have to have communication. And two, I think leading by example. Like, I chose to go back and show people how I worked these weddings, how I did them, how I communicated with clients. That was huge. I mean, people don't work as hard, to be honest, unless you're there. Like, I think people see what you do and then they emulate that. But when I really had to come back to Ohio, it was all prayer. I really had to trust in God, because He called us to this. It's like, there's only so much I can do. And at that point, He's got to come in and provide seamless weddings. And that's what it is because these are, I've dealt with some really hard weddings, and I was the owner. And so for me, it was like, okay, like, it's praying over each wedding, it's communicating. This is what the bride is like. This is what I think they're going to want. This is what the venue is like. Really communicating those things and your expectations, and just jumping. Then that was like another thing too that I'd realized, and that my husband had helped me to come to see, is like, we had so much support in Spokane. We had so many people that if it came to like a split second on the dime where someone couldn't deliver the trailer, someone couldn't work the wedding, we were going to have to trust that they could come through for us. And I think that's where one thing that we had built such a presence when we were there, and we did so much of that for others, that we really had to rely that somehow they would do the same for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a big leap of faith to be able to trust in that community, especially when you don't really have eyes and ears on the ground any longer, and to kind of trust that people will have your back to help you through that.
Totally. But I think when you invest in people and then you also help them through those hard times, they become even more reliable, which is why I don't want to like cast a shadow on that because personally, because I did see her through, she's so like loyal to
Yeah,
me.
she's way more invested in the
Exactly.
outcomes. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And so that was something that we just had to hope that it would, be reciprocated. Doesn't always happen, but yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like that translates so beautifully into, right, adding children to the mix, right? So you've now like, did you have your daughter before you moved to Ohio, or did you get pregnant when you were in Ohio?
Well, both. I mean, I had my daughter before and then I got pregnant and Ohio was great.
Right, with your
So
son.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you also then had to navigate moving away from your family in Seattle. And now your husband, you had mentioned, is from Ohio, has some roots there, right? So you're shifting kind of familial units. But what was that transition like for you in terms of motherhood? I mean, we highlighted it briefly. I mean, throwing a child into the mix of life without a business is, turns everything upside down. So what did that shift look like for you? So becoming a mom, kind of uprooting the community that you knew from the community that you knew, and then adding a child and moving a business. Like, what did that look like for you?
It was like, I can't even believe it happened, but it's no surprise to me. So the crazy thing is like my husband moved when she was 4 months. So technically, like I was still in that, like some women are still in like their time of being off from work. Like, you know what I mean? And so for me, I was still enjoying and romanticizing in that like first newborn stage. I was so in love. I was so, I still would do anything for her, obviously. But it was still, I still had those endorphins, right? I had such a great experience with her when she was first born. And so I was on cloud nine. I was totally, I mean, of course, I was really sad to leave my clientele, but I'd also realized like, okay, I want to do something different. I feel called to start being in a career where I'm not trading time for money. I'm working, I'm learning how to lead others. I'm learning how to like, that's what I knew my calling was. I wanted to move into that leadership role, which was why I joined Mary Kay. And I still hadn't even joined at that point. So we moved here and I think everything happened so quickly, Emily, that I don't really think I had time to process like what was happening until we got here. And then we bought our house and I was a full-time stay-at-home mom because I went from working full-time behind a chair where I was physically at work a lot, physically working a lot. And then I came to be a stay-at-home mom and she was 6 months old and then I got pregnant and so it was the perfect storm that when I was pregnant with my son, I don't know if I was depressed or if it was just the perfect storm of like, I'm not great with first trimester. I get sick, throwing up a lot, I get nauseous. We just moved into our new home, into a new town, no family, no support. My husband actually doesn't have family here. We
Oh,
don't
okay.
have, yeah, we actually don't really have anyone here, but it's fine. It's totally fine. But yeah, I really had no one. And this year, this transition to Ohio, I'll say it right now, was the hardest year of my life. I personally went from such a high with my daughter that I hit such a low of lows, not because I was pregnant again, but because it was like, I just got stripped of everything. I was stripped of my identity in being a business owner, working behind the chair. I was stripped of my family. I was stripped of my comfort zones of my home. And I got pregnant again. And so, yeah, it was hard. And there was no way for me to really, the only thing that what I was holding on to was my relationship with God and I had my Ginger Root Society community still. And I was still I still had the women in there who I was really close with, and my mom. My mom did this exact same thing when she was pregnant with us. And so there's a different level of empathy from other mothers. There's a level of empathy that nobody will ever have for you besides another mom that has been through it and has been in the trenches and knows really like the nitty gritty. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I don't
absolutely.
know if I actually answered that whole
You
question.
did. You did.
Okay,
It's
okay.
a really appreciated view on it because I think there's a level of misunderstanding of once we make it, right? Once we create this business or we have it really down pat the first time as a first time mom, right? We have this like great experience. We think it can't go away, right? We're like, oh, we have it all. Like, this is great. This is wonderful. And it can absolutely change on a dime. And, there's experiences that we have as first time moms that look dramatically different the second time. And, you can absolutely have, we've heard a handful of these stories also through this podcast and this project of women who have had very blissful, romanticized versions of motherhood with their first child and then experience really hard hitting postpartum depression with their second. And there's no real indicator as to why certain things happen, just that we are meant to navigate them and like move through those experiences. So I do appreciate like that transparency and that it really can be changed at any moment. And it's beautiful too that you were able to connect with your mom too on this. I think there's a level of I love my mother, so I'm very grateful for her, and there's a level of I think disconnect until you experience things that your mother has experienced, and then you are able to have empathy for them. And I always say the hardest part about becoming an adult is seeing your parents as humans. For me, it's like the transition of seeing my parents as human beings was difficult for me for a while. And now that I'm experiencing very similar things to what my mom experienced and you experienced to what your mom experienced, there's a whole other level of, like you said, empathy and understanding and compassion that we can have for other women.
Right. It's so true.
And it is hard to do sometimes. It is hard to do sometimes. So I appreciate your kind of transparency in that and kind of moving through that. And I also loved what you had said too about this like personal evolution that you had gone through of like knowing that you wanted to kind of shift your role in this business. You wanted to take on more leadership and you wanted to do things a little bit different and kind of grow your engagement and your experience in this world and finding challenges that come along with that too. And then, kind of trusting that you will navigate and flow through that. So how have you supported yourself from this point of realizing you're pregnant with your second, physically you're depleted, right? You're really having a tough first trimester, possibly second. Like, how do you support yourself through that, either physically or I know you had mentioned like the Ginger Root Society and like your trust in God. What does that look like? Or these like weekly meetings that you had with these women, daily prayer sessions? Like, how do you support yourself with those communities?
Well, I'll say that for me, like if I don't have at least a half an hour in the morning before my kids wake up for anything to spend time alone with God, just one on one, I would not be the same person I am. But I would say through this time, Karina had called me to be a leader in the society of being a ambassador. And that meant I had to lead these sessions. And so there was a level of accountability that I just had to mentally get over myself. It was like, you know what? I'm sick. I don't feel great, but I'm going to show up the best way I can. And to be honest, I think that's how I did it with my first when Clover was born because I had to show up for clients then. And so it was one of those things where I just had to show up. And these women, not that they were like counting on me, but there was an accountability to where we had to show up for these calls. And same thing goes for my children. Like Clover, she can't just like let her, So there's just this grit. There's a grit that you get, and it's like
You just got to do it.
you
Yeah.
just got to do it. And that's how I feel about, it's like we just wake up and do the damn thing. It's like I'm sick, but you know what? Like
Yeah.
you form this level of fortitude of I'm a mom, but I'm their mom, and I got to show up for them. And it might not be perfect, they're, whatever. But so I would say that it's just spending time with one on one with God, having other women and people that, are counting on you, and especially your children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
Yeah,
I would say.
absolutely. I love too that there's that like recognition of this inaccurate description of what perfection is, right? It's like there's this like idea that we have to show up perfectly or we shouldn't show up at all, or we have to be the best mom and we have to give them all the attention, and we're going to screw them up if we don't, or all these kind of misconceptions around what we need to be for other people. And it's really if we can give ourselves that permission to show up for ourselves in the best way that we can, it's absolutely perfect for our kids. And we can show up for these women that we said we would stand up for and we would show up for. And maybe my hair's not washed today, or, I haven't done all of the prep work, but like my presence is enough in those moments.
Totally. And that's where really it's taught me a lot too, just with how I've chosen to run my business with Mary Kay, with being strictly on social media. It's like you want to show up, so perfect on social media all the time. And it's like we have all these filters now, and there's this level of like having it all together. And it's like, no, I think now more than ever, people want real. They want genuine. They want connection. They don't want the perfect filtered life. It almost like turns people off more.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me. I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a very similar experience to that as well. And I think we're also in this time, right, where the goal should be to only follow people that make you feel good about yourself and to, give you some inspiration, not this like unrealistic expectation that you should be better, right? It's so disheartening. So I am hopeful and grateful for you highlighting that, and, hopeful that that trend keeps continuing, because it is so difficult to be like fake all the time. Like, we don't need that. No one needs
Yeah.
that.
I just feel like the pendulum has swung. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
think it went from showcasing your life now to, okay, how can I show up even more real now? That's how I feel. Or at least how I feel the trend going. And I think it's because I personally feel like COVID just really put a wrap on it and was like, meh, sorry, you can't show off your fancy vacations. You can't show off all these things that you're doing. You're doing nothing. Like you're in your home. So like, let's be honest. So I just think like the pendulum has swung. And so
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's also just so much chaos happening right now with like a lot of things being highlighted and people being called out for things. The politics in this world right now are out of control and unprecedented, like we've never quite seen or expected to see, I think, at this point. So there's so much shifting that I agree. I think we are moving into a new realm that is welcomed. So I think with that, let's wrap up. I want to give you just a little bit of time just to highlight your business. Where can our listeners find you? What are you working on right now? How can they engage with you?
yeah, so you guys can find me. So I have two different Instagrams. So I have the Hairstream, which is just the Hairstream on Instagram. There's also hairstream.com, which is where you can look at all the info about the Hairstream. But then there's also my personal page, which is like my Mary Kay blogging page. It's Lindsay_Dickerhoof. And that's been my newest love and just excitement for kind of how the direct sales world can impact mothers. Really gives them that flexibility of being able to stay home, but then also work a business and still fulfilling that need and that purpose within you, you know? And so that's been my biggest thing. So yeah, you guys can follow me on either. They're both really fun.
Amazing. I bet. Amazing. Yeah. And I will make sure to link those in the show notes and on our blog page. So for anyone interested in checking those pages out and following Lindsay, please do. And we will wrap up here. Lindsay, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.